As children, John and his brother Jeremy faced something terrifying, something they called the Hunter. A shadow in the doorway, darker than the night itself.
And I remember hearing breathing. I looked up and I saw this blacker than black figure in my doorway, like peeking in.
Years later, the Hunter's gone, but John faces a new loss. His brother Jeremy's no longer here. Or is he?
And I'll never forget when I saw his note. The last thing he wrote, he said, "John, we'll be in touch, I promise."
John believes he's found a way to reach Jeremy from the other side. But what happens when the dead answer back? Welcome to Retraced Echoes. In the small, quiet city where John Griffin grew up, there was nothing that unusual about his early life. In fact, like so many other children, John attended a Catholic nursery school where discipline was strict and the lessons of faith, they were woven into daily routine. But John wasn't what you would call perhaps a model student. In fact, at just 4 years of age, John was oftentimes in trouble, favoring playtime over Bible study. He spent so much of his time in what they called the thinking chair. And with doing that, of course, the teachers came to expect the sight of his mother, shaking her head as she would pick him up. But one day something changed. When John was playing in the back room of his home, he looked out the window and saw something extraordinary. A glowing figure bathed in light, standing in the backyard.
The back room was more of a playroom. I remember looking out the back window and I saw what looked like an angelic being. It was this light figure and it was beautiful. I didn't know what it was. I didn't understand what I was seeing. And I brought it up to my teachers when I went back into nursery school, when it started back up. And they were like, "Oh, that was an angel. You should come over here and come to this Bible study here."
Now, from that moment on, John's behavior, it shifted. His days in the thinking chair, they became rare, almost as though the vision had brought some type of peace to his restless mind. But this was just the beginning. As John grew older, life in the home, it seemed to shift with the birth of his younger brother, Jeremy. The arrival of his sibling, it marked the beginning of a series of strange and unsettling events that would forever change their childhood. See, at first, everything seemed innocent. John was still a child, just fresh from his encounter with the glowing figure that he once believed was an angel. But soon after Jeremy was born, something darker made itself known. It wasn't very long before strange things started to occur inside the home. John's parents noticed unexpected sounds, footsteps that would echo through the kitchen at night when no one else was awake. When they would go check on John, they would find him fast asleep.
When I was younger and I had just started walking, they thought that they heard me walking around in the kitchen. So my mother asked my father to go take a look. My father came out, saw no one was in the kitchen, walked into my room, and found that I was dead asleep. And the kitchen and the hallway would play a huge role in the haunting.
But nothing could prepare John for what would come next. One night, as he found himself lying in bed, his door, it was just slightly ajar. He would hear soft, rhythmic breathing coming from the hallway. At first, he just assumed it was probably his parents checking on him, but as the sounds grew louder, John's heart began to race. He looked up from his bed and saw a figure standing in the doorway, darker than the night itself.
It freaked me out because I would go, "Mom, Dad," but that's all you would get, just a it's like, no, that's not it. And then you'd see the figure just kind of move away. So I find out it's not them.
Frozen with fear, John watched as a figure would slowly retreat into the shadows. But over the next few series of nights, this same dark figure would return, always standing in the doorway and always watching. Now John, he could never make out the figures. It was always just a black silhouette.
I eventually saw a person appear. It was a younger male, really well dressed, and he disappeared. And that confused me. I've never seen that. So me as a young kid, still at age 4, was like, I saw a person with a superpower.
Now, John would naively share his experience with his classmates, telling them all about the disappearing person that he had seen. But instead of curiosity, his peers responded with fear. Now, word had spread quickly, and soon, John found himself isolated, labeled as someone to avoid.
But some of these kids brought this story home to their parents. One of my friends came back, or well, I'll say ex-friend, came in, and when I went to go play with him, he said, I was told by my parents to stay away from you because basically, in a different set of words, because obviously this is coming from a child, basically I was satanic.
Now, as time went on, the haunting presence, it grew more intense. John's younger brother Jeremy began to experience his own terror. John would look down the hallway and see that shadowy figure slipping into Jeremy's room, and that would be followed by the sound of his brother's terrified cries. Determined to protect his brother, John began sneaking into Jeremy's room at night, bringing him back into his own bed for his own safety, but the figure, it continued to haunt them both. And soon it was very clear that it had no intentions of stopping.
My parents tried to get him to go back in his room. When my parents would go to bed, I knew something was freaking him out, so I got up and after they went to bed, and I would go to his room and bring him to my room, being a protective brother. Part of that was remembering seeing that figure walk in there. That's just like, that's what's got to be bothering him. And he saw him eventually, years later, in a hunter outfit, standing by a Christmas tree, pointing a gun at him. And he said he had red eyes, but when he described his appearance, aside from the hunter outfit and the gun, he described something that the person that I saw that had disappeared. And I was like, oh my goodness. So he called him the hunter. So that's the only time he appeared in a hunter outfit. And that's when we referred to him from there on out as the hunter.
Now, from that night forward, the entity, it would be known simply as just the hunter. And he continued to stalk the two brothers, a dark presence looming over their childhood home. Little did they know, the nightmare, it was only just beginning. See, as John would grow into his teenage years, the presence of the entity, it remained a constant. The shadowy figure, once just a terrifying entity on the edge of his door frame, continued to haunt both he and Jeremy. But as time would pass, John would begin to wonder if the entity was truly who he thought it was. A breakthrough would come with research of the home. What he discovered would send chills right down his spine.
Someone that I delved into the history of the history of the house that helped me, they found the person. They found a record of the person, and when I saw them, they sent the picture to me. They sent the picture, and I'm like, that's him. That's the hunter. I mean, I personally right now believe that it was that person, but there are some things that happened during the haunting that make me question parts of it. And he only appeared with the red eyes once.
Now, over time, the haunting escalated. The dark figures and the growing sense of dread, it would drive John to the living room, where he'd sleep on the couch. Now soon, Jeremy, he would follow suit, seeking refuge from the horrors that plagued them both. The bunk beds that their parents had bought for them stood unused, mere symbols of the peace they could no longer find in their rooms. But the hunter was not alone. Other entities began to make their presence known. One night, John would lay on the couch, fast asleep, but he would be startled awake by the sound of a little girl's voice, faint and pleading, whispering, "Help me."
One night, the kitchen door, so the kitchen door, there's the living room, the kitchen, and then there's the hallway. The kitchen door was sliding door, it was shut, and I remember waking up and I heard a little girl saying, "Help me."
Help me.
So I hopped off the couch, and I go and I look through the crack of the door, and I see a little girl in the hallway saying, "Help me." So I flung the door open, and then she's gone. So I'm like, okay, that's weird. Then we have a little boy that was up in the attic, and he was always hiding in the back of the attic, and he was like my invisible friend. So I would go up and I would talk to him, and the little boy one time said, because I was like, why are you hiding here? You know, me as a kid. And he said, I'm hiding from the bad man. I'm like, wait a minute. So years later, when now I'm in my 20s, and I'm like, little girl saying, help me. Boy hiding from bad man. My brother seeing a hunter person with red eyes. Me being terrified by this other individual that's also terrifying my brother. It's always kids. Did this person in life have a problem with children? Because my parents weren't really experiencing anything terrifying. It was always kids.
As John and Jeremy would grow older, the hunter would slowly fade from their existence, almost as though the darkness, almost like it became uninterested in them. But the memories of those years, the years of being scared, the terror that they endured, that would never fade. The question remained, what had drawn the hunter to them? And almost as equally as important, why would it let go? Well, the haunting, it never remained confined to just the walls of their home. It seeped into every single corner of their lives. It would cast shadows over their entire childhood, as well as their adolescence. What started out as just terrifying but isolating encounters with this hunter soon became something far more common. The fear and the confusion of these paranormal experiences, they morphed into a deep sense of isolation, as well as depression. Not just from the haunting itself, but also from how the world reacted to that haunting. At home, John and Jeremy would be told over and over and over again that their experiences was nothing more than just bad dreams, the imaginations of a young boy that's just spooked by shadows. But in their hearts, they knew it wasn't dreams. Something unexplainable, it attached itself to them, and no one believed them.
Your friends abandoned you, which it followed Jeremy and I. It followed us throughout our school career, all the way through high school. My brother became guilty by association because it's like, oh, it's that freak's brother. So they start picking on him, and he started not having friends. And it's all, and I look back at this and I'm like, it's because I opened my mouth. My brother suffered because of this. So he went into depression at a very early age. So did I. But I think, if anything, he beat me to it, beat me in the sense of how early his depression was.
The relentless bullying weighed heavily on both brothers. John and Jeremy sank into depression at a very young age. For Jeremy, it hit earlier, a sadness that clung to him like a shadow. And John, he felt guilty, believing that because he had said something about all these haunting experiences that they were having, he had condemned his brother to a life of loneliness. The emotional and the psychological toll, it was unimaginable. I mean, they were outcasts, not just haunted by the supernatural, but also haunted by the cruelty of those other kids. The hunter's presence may have faded, but the scars it left behind. On July 7th of 2021, John Griffin's life, it was forever changed. The news came suddenly, shattering his world. His brother Jeremy had passed away. The days that followed were filled with grief and loss and unanswered questions. But one message from a note Jeremy left behind haunted Jeremy more than anything else.
My brother Jeremy, he ended his own life at the age of 30. It was July 7th, 2021. I'll never forget that day. You can't. Getting that phone call while you're at work. And I remember when I got that phone call, it was like, you know how you have, like, before death, there's a report of your life flashes in front of your eyes. I had that experience in a different way. I had our lives together flash. in front of my eyes. I had our dreams, the dreams I had of everything that we wanted to do together, flash in front of my eyes. And I watched that like almost symbolically, almost like burn up. But now I'm also a paranormal researcher, and I'm like, you know, he is, if consciousness truly exists, he's on that side now. He knows. And if consciousness doesn't exist, well, then he no longer exists. Or consciousness outside the body is what I mean. It did change things. It for a while, because part of what he experienced had to do with our haunting, and everything in his life led up to that moment where he made that final decision. And I'll never forget when I saw his note. And a lot of people, when they hear this part, they're like, oh, it's such a good thing, until you look at it from my perspective. The last thing he wrote in his note was to me. And he said, John, we'll be in touch, I promise. Now, for a lot of people, that's like, see, he made a promise, he's thinking about you, he's gonna be in touch, which he has been, of course. But I look at it as like, there's a deeper element to that. John, I'm aware that, you know, we did this research together, and it's without a doubt that spirits exist, that consciousness exists outside the body. So I know that when I do what I'm about to do, we will see each other again. That's how I interpreted it. And Jeremy, Jeremy and I, when we could say, when we said things, there are points where when we say something or write something, it's not always surface. There is a deeper element. So was that a deeper thing that he was saying? Is that, don't worry, John, you and I both know I'm not gone. I'm just leaving this part of this life.
John will be in touch. I promise. Those words lingered, fueling John's determination to do whatever he had to, whatever he believed was possible, to reach across the veil between life and death. The bond between John and Jeremy had always been strong. I mean, they weren't just brothers, they were partners in uncovering the mysteries of the paranormal. Together, they had explored the unknown, conducting experiments and doing research that brought them closer to understanding what lies beyond. Now, John faced the ultimate test, communicating with his brother from the other side. As John began to explore ways to communicate with Jeremy, the experience, it was deeply emotional. From time to time, it was emotional. But John wasn't ready to let go, not completely. He called out to Jeremy. He was hoping and praying that his brother would find a way to reach back from the other side.
He's on that side, and I begged for him. Please, if you still are in existence, and I called out to God and everything, like I was, it had been the first time because that's actually that night, I ended up praying for the first time in a long time on my way home from the hotel where my parents had to stay while they couldn't be at the house. And I said, if there's heaven and hell, if there's punishment for the way that he went or anything like that, please, he suffered enough in life. I feel responsible for this. If he has to have any punishment whatsoever, can he please be with me and experience our emotions as we go through this? And he has to help us. And so long as I follow through on my thing, when I cross, we cross into the light together. That he can essentially have a redemption arc.
John's mission was no longer about the paranormal. You see, it had grown much deeper than that now. He needed to know if Jeremy was still out there, if his consciousness still remained. And so, he embarked on a new journey, one that would bridge the gap between the living and the dead. This would all occur at the Wildwood Sanitarium, a place where the brothers, they had been there numerous times before. John initiated the first series of experiments aimed at contacting Jeremy. A spirit box now carried the weight of John's deepest hopes, that Jeremy would speak, that his voice would break through the static.
Anybody who sees any of the videos, current videos that I do now, you're going to notice I wear a gray lab coat. That's my brother's lab coat. It's a symbolism of wherever I go, he goes. We're in this together. It's the Griffin brothers. And he has communicated with me. I have him on EVP, Spirit Box.
This was the moment that changed everything. John had made contact with Jeremy, the one person he thought he had lost forever. Now there was proof. Jeremy was still there, still watching. He was still a part of John's life. As time progressed, so did the two of them in their communications. An EVP here, a flicker of a spirit box there, but soon, the moment that John had waited for, he captured an image of the apparition of Jeremy, an unmistakable image of his brother from the other side.
He actually helped with that. And it's such a mind-blowing story. And I remember when we got his apparition, somebody put it in front of me and said, John, take a look at this. And I looked at it and I go, I saw him immediately. And my mother was there. This was at Wildwood Sanitarium. I handed her the phone that the picture was taken on. And I said, we got Jeremy. And I remember running out of Wildwood Sanitarium out to the front sidewalk area. And I fell to my knees and started sobbing.
Jeremy had come through not just once, but multiple times. He appears in EVPs, spirit boxes, and even the apparition captured during the experiment. John's skepticism about certain methods, particularly the spirit box, it melted away as Jeremy continued to make his presence known. The spirit box, a tool that John had once dismissed, now became a key part of their communication.
I can't tell you how much, for the longest time, I could not stand spirit boxes. Even with my neutral mindset and all that, I have to be able to measure things, and I have, like for spirit box, I'm like, how can I create a measurement system to study this? It doesn't make sense to me. So to me, it's like, this seems like all a bunch of random, mumbo jumbo. When Jeremy comes through, not once, but multiple times, and even interacts with me directly, I'm like, and he knew I did not like spirit boxes. And then he comes over on that. And I'm like, you son of a gun. Like, you're making me look at this now. And now I had to. Ended up building my own spirit box with the help of, the name's Rick Perry. Awesome spirit box builder. I was just like, it was his that Jeremy was coming over that convinced me to look into it. And now I've been working on measurement systems and all that to try to understand this, like, how is this all working? Because I'm used to, I'm taking my digital recorder, I love my EVPs, nothing could beat that. Jeremy was officially the first apparition to appear in Project Apparition Hall. That was the picture I was talking about, where I ended up running out of Wildwood Sanitarium in tears. Like I said, he's just been helping nonstop. To give people a general idea of our dynamic on the science level, Jeremy did a lot with mathematics and statistics, and I was also a statistics person and numerology. So anything that was outside of what we were doing, we both would consult with each other. Now, you brought us both together. We were the numbers people. We have a reboot series called The Path to Communication. It's going to be an emotional story. It really focuses on building, we're going to have character arcs where, we're building ourselves up. You're going to see us, succeed. You're going to see moments where it doesn't go well, but you're also going to see the experiments. We're going to delve into the experiments as well, like why, the hypothesis, how it's being built. So you're actually going to see how some of the processes actually is working. And our big project that we've been focusing on right now, like I mentioned earlier, was the Project Apparition Hall. That has taken, especially within the past couple months, has taken front and center. The results that we've been getting have been nothing short of incredible. And the reason we're focusing on the apparitions right now, because EVPs, we made great strides with them. We have great data on it. We identified trends. But the one thing is that I want to know who I'm talking to. And again, it goes back to that composition. So the Project Apparition Hall is now front and center because it's pretty much the hardest thing that any researcher can document. And I want to alleviate that difficulty. Why is it so hard to get pictures and videos of apparitions? That's our huge project right now, and we have a documentary that we're filming on it now. Now that we know that what we are doing is having an impact. There's a documentary called Project Apparition Hall that we're releasing in 2025, and it's going to document the history of. It's going to go back to with my brother, where it started.
Even now, Jeremy continues to help John. Whether it's through an EVP session, a spirit box communication, or even subtle signs, John says he feels Jeremy's presence every step of the research. Their partnership, which began in life, was now extended beyond death. For John, the journey continues, but he no longer walks alone. You see, Jeremy's by his side, guiding him as they navigate the unknown together.
My name is John Griffin II. I'm the CEO and founder of UNI Research. On July 7th, 2021, my brother Jeremy took his own life.
John, it's your mother. Please call me ASAP, please. I need to talk to you ASAP. It's bad. It's so bad.
She said the dreaded words that no brother would ever want to hear. Jeremy killed himself. We found his suicide note, and I remember looking at it and seeing that the last line was directed at me. John, we'll be in touch. I promise. I knew from that point forward, I needed to reach out to my brother. I needed to know that he was okay. For our family, a large piece of us is missing. And I remember there's one photo from the funeral that I remember looking at. My eyes are always drawn to the image of my mother, and seeing the tears, seeing the frown, just the look on her face of just defeat.
I'm here with my son. I don't want him to feel alone, because he probably felt alone in so many ways. But his mom is here. I just need time to be by myself with him and just talk. And I'm gonna tell him how much I love him, because I can't do this. I just can't do this.
To see and know that they had to go through this, burying their child, the hardest thing any parent could ever do. It was eating me up inside. And I knew now more than ever that I had to do something. No more games. The paranormal needs to be solved now.
Tonight, and it's probably maybe within the past, I don't even know what time it was, maybe hour, half hour, something like that. We finally caught a picture of my brother Jeremy.
To be continued on John's channel path to communication. Channel in the description below.
Through the static, I hear you calling. In the silence, your voice is falling. Brother gone, but never really far. Echoes linger like a distant star. Spirit box, we talk through the night. Words of shadows in the pale moonlight. Trying to bridge the void we know. Memories in whispers grow. Voices through the static, heartache so erratic. Brother, can you hear me now? Reaching through somehow. Every buzz feels like a clue. Moments lost but still so true. You left but left behind a trace. In the static I find your face. Brother, in the beyond I plead. Hear my call, it's a silent need. Stars may fade, but our bond stays, guided by these haunted ways. Questions float without a sound, yet your presence is all around. Waiting on a spectral line, hoping for a sacred sign.